Welcome back to another video from Carl's Cycle Supply. This video is the largest one we've made to date. It is a very technical video about the assembling of a 1942 Harley-Davidson EL motor, also lovingly referred to as a Knucklehead. We're going to go over a lot of info and show you how to take this lift full of parts and turn it into a running motorcycle. If you enjoy the video, make sure you watch till the end to see my dad take his very first test ride on this Cruiser Green 1942 61. This is a 1942 Knucklehead, and it's very special because it is my dad's. And the reason we're doing this intro is to talk about the motor building video that we just finished recording. The video is something a lot of you guys have been asking for. It's a technical video. It shows how the Maestro puts together Knucklehead motors. It's an assembly video. It doesn't have how to do flywheels or heads or carbs. Those are future topics that we want to do.
Absolutely.
But for now, this is just kind of a fun assembly video. If you guys want to see something specific, leave a comment. We'll maybe work it into our schedule over the next 6 months or a year.
We can address whatever your needs are.
Yep. We tried to cover everything in one shot, and we ended up having to shoot different parts on 2 other engines, so most of it's a 42 motor, some of it's a 45 motor, and some of it's a 46 motor.
Yeah.
So if you see little differences, that's what it is. We tried to get it all in there. There's a lot of good information in it, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Keep looking at them and spread the word.
Looking at what? The videos.
The videos.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Today, we're going to go through putting together a knuckle motor. I welded up and surfaced the engine mounts on the bottom and decked the cases on the top. Any other little welding to do. You notice circle here, I put a heel coil in here because the threads were shot, and I've checked all the other threads. Once I get everything all ready for the final assembly, I'll spot face the cases on the mating surfaces, and I'll replace the bushing for the cam in the case. Also, I replaced the bushings in the cam cover and line ream everything, fit up everything with the cam in before I put the cases together with a gasket and set up the end play. While I'm at it, I'll take the pinion race on the right case and I'll line ream the pinion bushing to that race. Everything is determined off this race, straight, parallel, and perpendicular, in order to make the motor run. I've already put new races in the cases. I spray the inside of the cases. You got to coat them because there's different porosities in the material. You don't want oil leaks on the outside through the cases. So I use this Dolph's ER44 Class F polyurethane red insulator. It's used on electric motors. So it's impervious to heat, impervious to oils and lubrication and solvents. We just mask off the cases, paint the insides so we don't get any porosity leaks. Or new races, fit new bearings. Then I have my flywheels. Usually the old flywheels are junk, and they've been balanced a bunch of times. The thrust washers have gone through friction and spun, and so we're dealing with, 70, 80, 90-year-old stuff here. And Truett and Osborne in Wichita, Kansas, makes new flywheels. S&S and other companies have been building light flywheels forever, but with the heavier flywheels, you carry the torque with the heavier weight, and that's why I like them. Because you can lug these. These are aftermarket rods and new pins, new bearings. I usually check my wrist pin bushings. I check my rod bearings. Usually they're a little tight on the rod sets. So what I do is I hone the rods a little bit to give them a little more clearance so that they're happy when you first get them together. Instead of concentrating on a tight motor that needs a lot of careful braking, you can put this in use a lot easier, a lot faster. And then I put my bearings, and on my wall here I have the specs. The pinion bearing clearance is 8/10 at 1 2/10. The sprocket bearing is a 1/2 thousandths to a thousandths. The rod bearings are 1 thousandths to 1/12. So I fit all my bearings. The thrust washers set up the end play. The end play is 12 to 14 thousandths end play on flywheels. We have all that pre-done. It's kind of boring. We don't need to go over it in depth. Everything's right in the service manual. This flat washer with a tang goes in first in the case, and that holds the bearing pack in here. Now we're going to pre-lube the bearings. We use Permatex Ultra Slick engine assembly lube. This is really good because you can pre-lube your complete motor. You can do all the oiling on it. Plus, when you fire it up, it will mix in with the oil, and unlike grease, which I used to use, but if it sat for a long time, it would coagulate and you have a locked up motor before you even had it running. You just take the bearing cages, and by the way, we make these bearing cages because nobody else makes them right, and so we spend a lot of time and money making correct ones. You want your rollers to roll and not skip. And we'll just put them in the cages. We use liberal amounts of the assembly lube. As I'm sure you've heard, oil is the cheapest mechanic ever. So keep your oil clean, keep yourself lubed up, and everything will be a better world. So these bearings are lubed on the outside and on the inside, and it takes double roller bearings on the sprocket side and single on the pinion side. Sprocket is where you got your power. Pinion is where you have your points of location. Everything is located off the pinion bushing. We want it nice and lubed here. Make sure that's lubed all the way around there. And there we have the lubed bearing pack. Put that in there. 2 thick spacers that go on the bottom end. The thinner one and larger OD diameter goes in the pinion. Okay? Then we also want to put a little lube right around here on the face of the case itself. So now it's time to put our flywheels in. We take our flywheels right over here. We've already set up our end play with the different thrust washers and centered up our flywheels in our cases. We put a little assembly lube on the thrust washer so that it's got some pre-lube, and on both sides a little brush works really great. So we've got our pinion over here, pinion side, and our sprocket side. I got this it's a lid for a little spray can, and then I put it on this other can, glued it on, so that's my little stand. I made that up so that it wouldn't tip over. I dip it down in the brush. I put it around here on the pinion surface of the flywheel. This is the pinion bearings. This is where the shaft goes. Clean your cases up. And you can just put your flywheel assembly right in the cases. Slide it in there, make sure it's nice and straight. Now we have our flywheel assembly in the right case. What we want to do now is lube up our sprocket shaft. We take the double set of bearings. This is where the thicker, small diameter, small OD diameter spacer goes for in between the 2 bearing sets. And then also a washer just to hold back up on there. Okay? This is the left case, and you can see we put a seal in here already. We put a helicoil in here because that's stripped out. But anyway, it's all set up, aligned and everything, and we're going to put that on here. First we got to put our sealant on the outside here. We're going to put the cases together. 40 and later cases. We have the bottom 2 studs are a little bigger in diameter, so they have these step studs. It's bigger in here than out here, and they're kind of alignment studs. Put those in. For the 2 case halves bonding together, there's this product called Moto Seal. And you might have heard of it called Yama Bond, and it's Moto Seal gasket maker made by Moto Seal. You just buy it at the auto parts store. Then you put a little light coat all around the case. You just take your finger and you spread it out. Just a light coating all the way around the cases. And when you put them together, a little will squeeze out, but you can wipe that off after it dries. You don't want it to squeeze into the cases. You just want a very light cover. Take your little finger here and wipe off on the outside of the case, and it'll be easier to clean off afterwards. But that'll make a nice sealing surface for the whole thing. I had a little trouble with this set of flywheels. The crank pin was hitting on these. Those are the blind holes for the primary bolts, 5/16 bolts. Now we'll just put this right on here. Put it on them two alignment studs. Put a little on this rubber seal, a little on that. Push it together. We have these nuts that Colony makes. They have a little shoulder on them, so that shoulder goes towards the surface. It has a nice even surface to go into. Where your S-pipe goes, you want to leave it just flush, and then on the top have some stick out each side. Soft face hammer so you don't mar up the hardware. On a Knucklehead, your top stud, you have to allow for your carburetor support, and then also speedometer cable clamp. So this clamp will go here and another nut goes there. Wipe off a little of this gray on the outside. It's a lot easier now than after it sets up. Check your rear motor mount. You can see if you're not shifted, and you just run your fingernail across there. If you catch it on one side or the other, then you have to adjust it just a little when you
fly cut
the motor mounts and deck the cylinders. You get all that in line. The very shortest stud goes in right above where the motor mounts go. These are new studs. The original ones had a radius on the outside. I sanded a little radius on it and then blast it and reparkerize it. It's a little detail that hardly anybody ever does, but it just makes a better deal, a little more professional. So once again, we take and run this up till it's just flush, and then tighten up on the other side. That way it won't interfere with the exhaust. You can run them up with the electric wrench, but when it comes to final tightening, you want to use 2 wrenches to get the feel of the torque. Okay, so now we have the cases bolted together, and we're going to put it in the engine stand. This engine stand's had hundreds of motors on it. Okay, so now we have the engine block securely bolted to the engine stand. Flywheels all set up inside. There's the flywheels. They turn nice and free. We previously set up the end play by adjusting the shims, the thrust washers on the flywheels. There's a special little tool that you can put on the sprocket shaft, but I made up this little tool with an indicator, and you push on the indicator back and forth and determine the end play. The flywheel end play is supposed to be 12 to 14 thousandths. I usually set them up at the top end of the tolerance, 14. And you can see I'm pushing the flywheels back and forth in the cases, and everything's nice and copacetic. The heavy end is down on the bottom because that's the way they're balanced. Also, you have to make sure that everything is free and rolls like this. Otherwise you have binding causing friction, and with the friction you'll cause heat buildup. Heat buildup will cause failure. and you'll destroy your brand new engine. To put this spacer on, that slides on there. Brand new oil pump shaft, and we fit it to the bushing. Slides in there nice and easy. We'll put a little lube on it, and a little lube inside the shaft. Little brass shaft. Very seldom you gotta replace that bushing. Plus I have a dedicated reamer to ream it if I have to. I'm just checking the length of the shaft. Our next step is to measure the oil pump gears to make sure that they're the same thickness, and we'll have the proper end play. So we've got a matched set of gears for our oil pump, the feed and return. Return gears on a Knucklehead are thinner. They're 1/4 inch instead of 3/8, and the feed gears are the same. A big problem with today's oil pump gaskets are they're always too thick. They're usually about 7 to 10 thousandths thick. So I had a guy cut me out gaskets that are 3 thousandths thick and made out of paper, real thin paper. And that way you get your alignment, your thickness, your stack of your papers correct like they had on the factory. And it's a big deal for oil pressure, especially in Knuckleheads, to have the proper thickness of gaskets. So now we put a key in our oil pump shaft. It's sticking out here, and we'll put the keyed oil pump gear, the return or feed gear, in first. Put a little lube on it on both sides and stick it on here. Come here, Brittany, hold this key.
Okay.
Okay. We have our keyed feed gear installed, lubricated, and we measured them both. They're within 1/1000th of an inch. Otherwise you'd have to take them over to the surface grinder and match them up. Luckily, we don't have to do that. So we lube up the idler gear for the oil pump feed, and then we put the oil pump body on. I use gasket cinch on these thin gaskets. And we have our new old stock oil pump body here. I'll put a little gasket cinch sealer on it. We've already cleaned it and everything. Measured the distances, the depths and everything. So I put a little gasket cinch on both sides of the gasket, just a very light coat. And now I'm going to put some pre-lube in here in the oil pump bodies. We got some pre-lube on the case. We got pre-lube on the gears. We have radius studs. Tap it on right there. Okay, now we got a little paint on our end plate. So we're going to scrape that off because otherwise that'll interfere with our stack. Very important that you have equidistant stack and the proper stack on all the parts of the oil pump. If the oil pump jams up and doesn't turn, you'll shear the keys and you won't get any oiling. And consequently, you'll burn up your brand new motor. So we don't want to do that. Blow it off here. Next step, put our Woodruff key in the end plate here. What happens is we want it tapered down so we can start the gear on it in the proper spot, and then it will roll in as we put the gear on.
As the gear slips on. That's so neat.
We're a little snug here. So we're going to put some of our screws on and torque them down to the correct amount. We put our 2 top oil pump body screws in, and then the blind hole screw. This is a new old stock oil pump, and this was not counterbored for it. So we had to put it on the mill, counterbore it, so we could use it. Never been on a motorcycle. We'll run these bolts up, and then torque them down with our inch-pound torque wrench. Usually to 90 to 120 inch-pounds. I usually just do them 100. So we have those 3, our oil pump turns. So now we'll get this gear on here. We're going to put this earplug down in the oil feed. Okay, put that down in there. That way if we drop the key, it won't go down into the motor. So we'll put the key in. A little lube on here. Well, we dropped the key, but we had the
Earplug in.
earplug in. So it didn't go down into the motor. Just a little too long. So we'll put that in there. It swells up. Good to go. Shine the light in there. Okay, so these are little snap rings. They're kind of a bear to get on. But Jim's makes this little tool. You put the snap ring over on this tapered section. You push that in until it's flush. And then you can just push this right over the top on the end of the shaft and install the circle clip right there. We've got our blind hole screw in. We've got the two top nuts and washers. Everything's torqued. So we're going to put the last idle gear in, which is also the drive gear. So we stick it this way out so the tangs can bond with it. Tap it in there. And once again, check our oil pump. See if it turns. Turns a little hard. There it goes. Make sure it's nice and clean. No paint on it. It's got a little divot, so we're going to use a diamond lap to get this little burr off. Get it nice and flat. Did all the high spots and everything. And we'll do it on the other side.
I suppose if there's burrs on it, it would cause it to seep and leak.
Yeah, with the thin gasket, it will weep oil. Years ago, I had a whole bunch of these laser cut, and you can see this is an original one where the gears have imperfections in them and rolled around, but it's not completely through, so it will work. So now we'll put the gasket on here, and we'll hold it. We'll just trace around it. And when we take the gasket off, we can see where the gears go, and the rest of it needs gasket sealer. I'll put a little gasket sealer on it. That way we aren't putting gasket sealer in between the rotors and the plate. It just goes on right where we want it. A little sloppy here, but I'll just take my fingertip and voila. So now we put this gasket on right here, and then put a little gasket cinch on each side. Just a very thin layer, just enough to tack it up. And with these thin gaskets and everything has to be flat so that it doesn't leak between a gasket and the surface. We put this on, line it up with the dowel pins, push it all the way on. Now we check our oil pump, and it clears here. You can see it rotating around. Perfect storm. Okay. So we're going to put the rotary valve in here, the little assembly lube on it. It'll stick right there because a lot of the guys put this on in the pump in the body, and then they don't have it properly seated in here, and they tighten it up and they break this ear off or this ear off. Now we take this, put our gasket cinch on it. We've got the flywheels in the cases, the bearings fit. We got the end play set up at probably about 15 thousandths of an inch. It rolls over nice and easy. And what you want to do, you want to have it so it rolls over, and about halfway through the stroke, you let go of the rods and it comes back up. That way there's no binding, and everything's all properly hand fit. And that's very important. You have to hand fit everything. We put the oil pump on that are the proper thickness. We mic all the gears, everything. And you can see we'll put the oil pump drive gear on our pinion shaft, push it in, and we'll pick it up. And now it's spinning the oil pump. And same thing is when we go halfway through the stroke, it comes back up on its own. That's a nice, clean, free, happy motor. So the next thing we do is we put our spring spacer on our pinion shaft, and then we put our drive gear, pinion drive gear, with the marks out on here, and it's can only go on one way because one of these is thicker than the rest of them. So we roll it around until it slips on. You want a nice free fit. You can have a slight press fit, but when you move it back and forth, you don't want any slop. If you do, you'll have a little knock in your motor, and it'll drive you crazy. So anyway, we're going to get it around till our timing marks are up. Here's the one for the cam, and here's the one for the circuit breaker drive gear. We have our shafts in here, new shafts, new bushings, and everything's fit proper. We want to line up our timing marks here, right here. Push that gear in, and same with our idler gear for the generator.
Put that on wrong and we'll show it, and then we'll put it on right and show it.
Here's it's on backwards, and these gears don't mesh up here, okay? And notice that this is right flush, and this is proud a little bit. So when we put it on the right way, these are flush.
That's a happy gear.
Yep, that's a happy gear. We lube everything with assembly lube, and the reason we use assembly lube instead of grease or oil is the grease doesn't blend too well with oil. But the assembly lube, it just goes right into the oil and mixes fine. It's got what they call stiction, where lubricity plus it's sticky and it stays in place.
There you go, stiction.
Stiction. We have our cam lubed up, and we've already put our cover on and the gasket and checked our end plate. Now here's one of the S&S high evacuation breather gears. It's got more timing on the small hole and the big hole. It's got the later style spacer for the gear, and underneath it is a little T. But if you put this on, you just see barely the T, so I just put a little magic marker line on here. I put the stiction in here, the assembly lube in here, and then I put it in until it's there. We have timing marks all lined up. Here's the breather one, here's the cam one, and here's the circuit breaker drive gear. All lined up. There are little keepers on here. Got a little more, because of the stiction, we have a little more friction. Okay, we're putting a cam cover gasket on, and this one had pretty chewed up dowel pins, so we put new dowel pins in the cam cover, and we're ready to put the cam cover on. We have an air chuck in our mill and collets, and we put the collet in and run it up on the air chuck, and then just wiggle the case and pull it down, and that's the way we take them out. Anyway, we've replaced the bushings in the cam cover, also in the case, and we sized them and line reamed them and everything. So we set it all up.
What's the important thing you do with the cam bushing after fitting it?
After fitting it?
Yeah, what do you have to do?
Well, before you fit it, you should drill your oil hole in here.
Yep.
And also your oil hole in your pinion bushing.
Very good.
And here we're putting some stiction on our assembly lube, and put it on here on all the bushings, all the wear surfaces, and then we'll just slip it right on. And you should be able to push it right on without beating on it. Because if you got a bead on it, there's something binding up, and it won't turn over as easy. Okay? So now the next thing to do is put in the cam cover screws. So we're going to put anti-seize on these cam cover screws because they're steel and the case is aluminum. So it's dissimilar metal. It'll cause corrosion.
Thank you, Permatex. That is the coolest thing, isn't it?
Yep. We got the cam cover screws in. We use an inch-pound torque wrench, and we torque them to 100 inch-pounds, equal pressure all the way around. And then we turn them over again. It turns nice and free. That's what we want. Here's what we do to the lifter blocks. First of all, we super clean them, and we see if there's any burrs on them, on the bores or anything. We paint them with this. Paint the lifter blocks plus the oil pump with this Imran 5000. It costs a ton of money, but if you get a gas leak from your carburetor or something, and it runs down on your lifter blocks and your oil pump and stuff, it doesn't wash away the paint like the Harley paint does. And it's very, very durable. I've been using it for many, many years. I use it on the cylinders and heads also. It works fantastic. So anyway, we inspect our lifters and see if there's any marks or scars or tattoos. But overall, it's pretty darn nice. And then, if you can, try to get original tappet adjusters. The aftermarket ones, ball isn't machined right. It's too small, too shallow, and it doesn't seat in there, and you've got to keep adjusting your valves forever until it seats in. Another thing is use new tappet rollers. You drill these out and you punch it out. You take the old ones out, you put the new ones in, make sure everything's clean. Also, when you have it apart, make sure you take your adjuster out and your rollers out. And you want to go in there with a brush and your parts washer so that you get all the dirt out from the inside of this. We got our tap block, our gaskets. So we'll put the gaskets on right here.
Yeah, and Knuckleheads use one gasket for front and rear.
Yep.
Unlike
They
Panheads.
just flip them over.
Yeah.
Quite frequently, this back gasket hits on the case and you have to trim it just a little bit so that the holes line up.
Oh, so it's good to pre-check.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Permatex Ultra Slick engine assembly lube. And I just use this little brush. And first I do the bores of the tappets. Now there's two different styles of tappets. One's longer than the other.
Yep, on the top piece.
Yep.
Intake, exhaust.
Yep. And you'll notice the tappet blocks, one's shorter than the other. So the short goes in the short and the long goes in the long. And it just so happens the long is exhaust and the short is the intake. If you want to get a nice coating of your stiction assembly lube on here, this is also known as cam lube too. And put it in here, move it back and forth a little as you go in. So we got these lubed up, and there's a front and there's a rear. The hole always goes towards the middle, the return hole. Put that in here. Slip it in and out. Make sure all it's free, because any sign of resistance is going to cause friction, and it will damage the new motor. We got these in, and we're going to put the screws in, but once again, just similar metals. So we use anti-seize. Okay, we got the lifter blocks in, all torqued down, everything's good. Now we're going to prime the oil pump. We have the bypass ball and adjuster adjusted to 3/8 of an inch from the face of this, and the cap with a little sealer on it, number 2. We have the oil chain adjuster. This is going to have a belt drive, so we put a little Loctite on it and screwed it all the way in just so it's seated. We have the oil switch, and once again we put number 2 Permatex on here. We torqued up all the bolts and everything. We put the fitting on. In our oil pump, we fill it up. We roll over our engine in the direction it's turning. It'll cause oil air pocket bubbles up here. And the way to get rid of those, just with the, right there. And then we fill it up again, and we keep rolling it over. You can see the air bubble coming up.
Yeah.
Break the air bubbles again and fill it up again. Just 50 weight oil is just fine. And we'll keep going.
Oh,
there.
You're primed.
Okay, it's coming out of the return line. We got this little cap. These are made by Colony, and they're handier than hell. And we'll just put that on there, snug it up just a little bit. There we go. So anyway, this is our little check ball, a new 3/8 stainless steel ball. Bink in there. Bink. And this is a proper length spring and the cap right here. Put a little number 2 Permatex on it and just roll it around till the threads are on. Probably won't leak anyway. Screw it down, and then we got this big old honker screwdriver. We'll just tighten it down with that. So we use hollow ground screws on our screwdriver tips for all these, so it goes into the bottom of the hole and it doesn't distort the face of it. We're going to put our overhead oil line feed in the cam cover. We diamond tap it with a 1/4 inch hole, put a little 1/4 inch set screw in, and drill a 60 thousandths hole because it doesn't need much oil to the top end. Everybody says the knuckleheads leak so bad, but this is one way of addressing the overhead oil leak. Because the less you put up, the less that you have to pull down. And then to keep the refreshing finish on the new hardware, you just take this piece of plastic and tighten them up with that. That way it doesn't leave any marks on it. Your new hardware is pristine. All right. Anyway, we got the lifter blocks in, the oil pump on, the cam chest all buttoned up. The next step is to put our circuit breaker in. A lot of people call this a distributor, but actually it breaks the circuit. So that's why it's called a circuit breaker. These points from 1930 up to 48 had 2 pieces, springs and clips and screws, and the original ones were very good, and they pivoted off a little pivot with bakelite on it. The original points are made of unobtainium. You can't find them. And the reproduction ones, you spent all day trying to make the points match up, bend them around and this and that. And so a long time ago, I converted them to shovelhead points. I use blue streaks. They're the top of the line. You can tell by the copper. I drill out the pivot, and then I take and time the motor, put the points together on the timing mark, and scribe line here, back and forth, and I drill and countersink where the pivot goes, and then I put them back on, and then I mark out with the oval where the screw goes for the adjustment, and then hook up a wire to it for power from the original one, and voila, you have an updated circuit breaker that you can go to any auto parts store and get a set of points, and they're easy to change. It's far superior. We have to find the timing mark. And the motor's in the stand, and all we do is we turn it over until front intake is opening. And then now it'd be closing, it'd be sucking the air in, and now it's coming up on the ignition, the firing stroke. I have this little makeup mirror I stole from my wife.
She doesn't need it. She's naturally beautiful.
Yeah, she is.
That's my mom.
So anyway, we'll keep rolling over until the timing mark comes up in the hole. I use Truett and Osborne flywheels a lot, and I find that just about into the back of the hole is just perfect.
All right.
If you put it in the middle of the hole, it's just a little too late.
Running a little late.
Okay? So now we're going to stab our circuit breaker.
Stab it.
And it turns this direction.
Which is clockwise.
And we'll just take our circuit breaker plate, put it right on here, and full advance.
To be fair, this was already timed, so we're skipping a few steps.
Yep.
We'll do a full video on this.
We have to go one back. Anyway, here's our full advance. You can see that the points are just about to open. But we're not going to stab the distributor right yet because we're going to put the cylinders and pistons on. We have this precision ground pin. Jim's makes one and S&S makes one. And I got 2 of them. And this is the S&S one because it doesn't have a mark on it. This is 1/1000th over the wrist pin size. And you have to have 1/1000th clearance on your wrist pin bushing. This also doubles as
a go, no-go
gauge. Gauge for the wrist pin. So then we're checking the straightness of the rods to the cases right now. So you have a couple of rolling papers and get as thin the ones as you can. We have a friend of ours who makes rolling papers, and I told him I wanted some thin ones. And then you want to put down with your thumb on the middle of the rod and make sure that they both release at the same time. That way it's perfectly parallel. But now we have to do it in the other direction. It releases at the same time. So that rod's good. And now we're going to check the front rod. You're checking the rod, the diameter with the checking tool, and you're also checking to see if it's square. Okay?
If the rear one's good, the front one's usually good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice. Okay? We're going to go in the other direction and see how nice it is there.
You're doing real good, but you could go a little faster.
Okay, boss. And they both release at the same time, so that's fine. So now we know that our pistons are going to be square to the cylinders. Well, here's the heads. They have hardened seats in them, nitride coated valves, good springs. We replace the inserts if they leak and the rivets. We make everything completely free and loose. Match the top tins to the bottom tins. Match the bottom tins to the heads. Put them together and take them apart about 3 different times. We parkerize the top tins, and the bottom tins are powder painted. We replace the lines if necessary. We have a new wool stock head in the box, and the lower spring covers, the lower tins, are painted black. And this is parkerized, same with the nuts, polished rocker boxes, and chrome plated knuckle nuts. These are original Harley cylinders from 42. They're like 40 over 61s. These are the pistons. This is the coating I was talking about. Moly on the skirts for ease of break-in. Ceramic on the crown to keep the heat up in the head. The heads, the nitride coated valves, the nickel chrome alloy seats that are matched coefficient of heat expansion to the heads themselves. Made up for us by a company from Texas. These are 3-piece Hastings oil rings, reverse torsion second ring, regular top ring. This is the Andrews end grind stock replacement cam. These are the stock lifters. They're all ready to put the new rollers in. This is the lifter blocks, push rods and push rod tubes. Stainless steel keepers, 40, 41, 42 only. We made up a run of those. We have piston pins, and we have new old stock piston pin retainers. New old stock oil pump, we just couldn't bring ourselves to repaint it. And this hole where this bolt goes was not countersunk. That's why it never got used. So we put it on the mill and countersunk it, and away we go. This is our stuff for our pinion. This is for our oil pump and gear, which is going to go on next. Carburetor, manifold. Circuit breaker, we convert them to shovel head style points. That's why we have the post off and we have it marked with layout die. So we'll address that later. These are new bushings in the circuit breaker drive gear and the idler gear. Good Harley original shafts. So we're going to put the rings on the pistons right now. I already checked the gap in the cylinders. They're 15 to 20 thousandths. And this is a 3-piece oil ring. For years and years I used to put it together with the tangs pointing downward. But then I discovered in one of the piston sets that this goes up. So from then on, I go up. I index them around so that the gap is in the very back. And then 1 inch on each side on the other rings. I usually try to put the lower one in first. It's easier that way. But this one here, it's the upper one first. It just felt that way, and that's the way it goes. So anyway, put the bottom one in. They're 1 inch from the gap on each side. The second ring, if there's a groove in the ring, a little bevel, that's a reverse torsion ring, and that goes down. There's a dot on the top. And I put this down on here, and usually about 180 degrees from the top ring groove. You can expand these on, and but this little tool works really nice. And my very first motor rebuild that I did when I was 19 years old, I put new rings on my panhead. And I kept breaking the rings, trying to put them on. I think it took me 3 sets of rings to finally get it so it would work. So This little tool costs 10-15 bucks. It's a good investment. This is my ring compressor. Put a little oil on it. Smear it around a little. And then you'll notice I have my piston squaring plate to hold my piston. Check your ring gap one more time. Put the compressor on. And then take the cylinder and put a little oil in here. It's not much, just to make it slide a little easier. And your little notch always goes in the front or towards the middle. Push it down and take your ring compressor off. Push it back down a little bit more. And then roll your motor over. Add this handy dandy wheel over on the sprocket shaft side. Pull that down. Push this down here. Just roll it with your, until you get on your studs. And voila, there you go. Put the nuts and washers on and do the same thing with the front one. Now we're going to go over adjusting the valves. We got to put the push rods in. We got a lock nut and an adjuster. And when you get everything adjusted right, we have a wheel on the other side of this motor. You turn it over, and we turn it in the direction it rotates. The lifter comes up on the rear exhaust, so then we adjust the front exhaust. And you want just a slight drag, very slight drag. And it's properly adjusted. You lock down a lock nut and you roll it over a couple times, recheck it. Sometimes they're a little too loose, like this one here. And all you got to do is just hold back up on the lock nut, and that's the way you go. You adjust up those valves. Now,
Each one differently.
okay, this is one way of doing it. Right there. Like that. And the Superman way. Push it down.
What does the firing do?
Just a compression right on the inside. Seals better. It folds over on each side of the gasket.
Oh, cool.
Don't want any leaks. Carbonator right in here. Snug this up a little, get it on location. My 1942 motor that my son and I built, and it's for my 1942 Harley Davidson that I've been jonesing for years. It's going to be cruiser green. The chassis is all done. Stay tuned. We'll have a feature on it probably next spring. Bye now.
Here is a 42 Knucklehead that we've spent 7 or 8 years gathering up all the pieces for. And it's kind of the culmination of a lot of years of work. It was hard to find everything. It took a lot of time and patience to get everything working and happy. And now we're going to fire it up for the first time. We have oil in the motor, we have oil in the transmission, and we've never fired this bike up. So hopefully it starts. I have a pretty good feeling it will. We double check the fluids. There's engine oil, transmission oil, and then we have gas in the right fuel tank. Next thing to do is check for leaks, and I'm going to turn on the gas, put it on reserve, and now the gas from the right tank will start going into the left tank. You can see it in the bottom. I check for leaks on the crossover line. There's nothing going on there, and now the fuel's going from one tank to the other and then down to the carb, and it takes 17 seconds for the float bowl to fill up. It's probably been 5 or 6. If there's no gas coming out of the fuel float bowl, we'll be good to go. It actually doesn't come out of the float bowl, it comes out of this little hole on the side. So far, so good. Sometimes the float sticks. it's rubbing on the side of the bowl or the stem. It's real easy to adjust, and we check them, but mistakes happen. So I think we're doing good. That means the needle and seat's working, the float has gone up, it's closed the seat, it's not bringing gas in anymore, and this thing's ready to prime and fire. So there's thousands of things that have to work together to make these things a happy motorcycle, and we're pretty thorough and we have good checks and balances, but mistakes still happen. So I'm hoping this thing starts on the first kick. What do you guys think? Do you think it's going to take 20 or 30 or 2 or 3, or do you think I should just give up and go back to school? Leave a comment. Brian, I need you to go get a Bible and swear on it that you won't edit out the number of kicks this takes.
Dang it.
Should put some silicone on that.
Yeah, really.
Really, the spirit who did that is here with us. He's like, hey man, don't touch my work, I put that there for a reason.